Welcome to the deep dive. We're skipping the headlines today and going straight into the source material you shared.
That's right.
Today, that's a new book, The AO Show, which translates as Embedded Writing. And our mission really is to pull out the key knowledge, the important stuff, so you can get properly informed, but, efficiently.
Exactly. We'll help you grasp what really matters in this material.
We're going to start with the acknowledgments, how the book was actually made, and then really drill down into Chapter 9. It's got a fascinating historical argument.
Yeah, the acknowledgments can be surprisingly revealing about, the thinking behind a book. In Chapter 9, Printing Money for War, it gives us this really interesting historical angle on economic policy.
Okay, so acknowledgments first. Let's unpack this. The author kicks off by mentioning the significant burden of writing something this big.
Right.
And straight away, that tells you these projects are huge undertakings, not just dashed off.
Definitely not done alone.
No. And they specifically thank their wife, Name, for structural editing and that crucial early feedback. Having someone objective early on is massive.
Oh, absolutely. That first critical eye can shape the whole thing.
Then there's Mohammed Badran, credited with a lot of editing and research help, and Joachim Book for, it says, enhancing the quality. But what's really interesting is that Badran and Book, they pop up again later.
Ah, right. As contemporary authors who influenced the book's ideas.
Exactly. It suggests a sort of tight intellectual community working on this.
It really highlights the collaboration, doesn't it? Often you think of writing as this solitary thing, but here you see people contributing directly and shaping the core ideas. It points to a very interconnected process.
Totally. And then there's the sheer number of references, over 400.
Wow. Okay.
That signals straight away, this isn't just opinion. This is grounded in some serious research.
That's a substantial academic effort.
But here's a part I found really quite striking. The author deliberately included references that don't fully agree with their own arguments.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, they say these were valuable for stress testing their own concepts and refining the final output.
That speaks volumes about intellectual honesty, doesn't it? Actively engaging with views that challenge your own.
It suggests the conclusions they reached are probably pretty well thought through, having faced that internal debate already.
Yeah, it shows they're aiming for robust findings, not just confirming what they already thought. It demonstrates real rigor.
And the author even says, hey, go check out the footnotes and references yourself if you want to dig deeper. A potential goldmine there for anyone curious.
Definitely an invitation for further exploration.
Okay, then we get this list of contemporary thinkers who influenced the book. It's quite a lineup.
Who's on there?
Alex Gladstein, Ray Dalio, Stanley Druckenmiller, Barry Eichengreen, George Selgin, Luke Groman, Seyfedi Amis, Nick Szabo, Adam Back, Elizabeth Stark, Michael Saylor, Jeff Booth, John Pfeffer, and, like we said, Mohammed Badran and Joachim Book again.
That's a pretty diverse list. You've got people from traditional finance, economics, crypto, and Bitcoin advocates.
Right. It gives you a snapshot of the intellectual landscape this book is plugging into. Finance, tech, economics, maybe even some broader philosophical stuff.
And seeing that mix gives you clues about the book's potential scope, It suggests it's probably tackling big questions where these different fields intersect, lightly around money and economics.
Yeah, sounds about right. And one last thing from the acknowledgement, there's a philanthropic angle.
Oh.
All the profits from the first 1,000 copies sold are being donated to the Human Rights Foundation, HRF.
That's interesting. It connects the intellectual project to a wider purpose.
It does. Adds maybe another dimension to the author's motivation beyond just the academic side of things.
Suggests a commitment to certain values, perhaps reflected in the book's themes too.
Okay, so the acknowledgments definitely give us a solid look at the making of. Now, let's switch over to Section 3, the rise and fall of global monetary systems.
Right.
We're diving into Chapter 9, Printing Money for War. Just to set the scene a bit, we're talking World War I. Starts in 1914.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind-boggling how fast that one event spiraled. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Russia jumps in, which pulls in Germany, then France, and Britain gets involved too, largely because they were worried about Germany becoming too dominant.
And the scale was just unprecedented. The loss of life, the suffering, it fundamentally changed the world.
Absolutely. And the economic impact was huge too. Britain at that point was basically the world's economic powerhouse.
The dominant force, yeah. Though, interestingly, the U.S. actually had the largest economy, but was much more isolationist back then.
Right. And Germany's industrial growth was already seen as a major challenge to Britain's position even before the war.
That context is crucial. The geopolitical tensions were tightly linked with economic competition.
So Chapter 9 tackles this core problem. How on earth did Britain pay for this incredibly expensive war?
A massive undertaking.
The initial sort of public story was war bonds. You know, the government borrowing money directly from its citizens.
The classic fundraising method in wartime. Buy bonds, support the troops.
Yeah. But the author points out that maybe these bond drives weren't quite the roaring success they were made out to be.
Okay, so there's more to the story.
There is. And this is where it gets, well, really eye-opening. Research that came out relatively recently, 2017, from Bank of England researchers themselves.
Oh, from the bank itself.
Yeah, it revealed something that wasn't widely known or discussed. That the government didn't just rely on taxes or those public loans. They also financed the war effort by essentially creating new money.
Ah, so expanding the money supply. Basically printing money, though maybe indirectly through the banking system.
Exactly. It was a less visible way of funding the war compared to, say, raising taxes, which is always unpopular.
And that hidden aspect is key, isn't it? It suggests a deliberate policy choice with potentially significant, but maybe less obvious consequences at the time.
Huge consequences, especially for ordinary people. Because what happens when you increase the money supply like that without a corresponding increase in, actual goods and services?
Inflation. More money chasing the same stuff pushes prices up.
Precisely. So the value of the British pound fell. If you were just a regular person holding cash, or maybe you'd patriotically bought those war bonds.
Your savings, your purchasing power, it just gets eroded, devalued.
Yeah, it really hammers home how these big government financial decisions, especially the less transparent ones, can directly impact people's lives and wallets.
It's a powerful historical example of the real-world effects of monetary policy. This case study from WWI Britain shows the potential cost of, let's call it, monetary manipulation, particularly in a crisis. Inflation isn't just an abstract number. It affects real people, often those least able to bear it.
So let's kind of pull this all together, this deep dive into embedded writing. It's shown us, I think, first, the collaborative effort behind a big book like this.
And the diverse influences.
Yeah, and the author's approach to research, really valuing testing ideas even against opposing views. That feels important.
Definitely. That intellectual humility, the willingness to grapple with complexity.
And then looking at Chapter 9, we've got this concrete historical example, Britain and WWI, showing how hidden monetary policies can have very real, very significant inflationary consequences.
And that historical lesson about the impact of money supply decisions, well, it still resonates today, doesn't it? It reminds us how crucial monetary policy is for economic stability and just, well, everyday life.
It really does. So thinking about that WWI example, governments finding less obvious ways to manage finances during a crisis. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What are you thinking?
Well, it just poses a question for us, for you listening. What kinds of less visible economic mechanisms might be operating in our world today? And how can we get better at spotting them and understanding their potential long-term effects?
That's a really potent thought to end on. Considering history, what might we be missing in the present? Food for thought.
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.